Good morning, umpires. I'm coming to you from video feed because unfortunately I'm in sunny Arizona enjoying some spring training action watching the Kansas City Royals. I want to tell you how much I appreciate each of you guys for coming out today and taking 4 or 5 hours out of your schedule to come hear about not only some umpire training, but ultimately a little bit more about MSP and a little bit more about MSP love. I've spoken at 2 other umpire meetings so far, and got the meeting started with a little bit about who we are, where we come from, and I'd like to just start a little bit with where I got my start, if you guys don't mind. I started in this sport in 2001, and I ran the Basehor Field of Dreams out in Basehor, Kansas. And a little bit behind that, I had just met my wife in January of 2001, and was working retail. Got asked to be a volunteer at the Field of Dreams to run some softball tournaments. I was at a place in my life where I don't think I really knew what volunteer work meant, but figured it would be a good start for me maybe to get back to a little bit to society that seemed like I'd messed up the last 3 or 4 years of my life leading up to this point. And ran baseball tournaments, and it was about a little bit into about the second month of doing that, they asked me to also overtake the softball side. I did that through July of that year, and in July I got married to my wife, and she had 3 from a previous. We had our 4th one then on the way, and I lost my job. And so pretty humbling experience to be in that place, to trying to support a family, get started with life and that whole endeavor, and then to come to find out that I don't even have a job to go home to. That was the biggest blessing that's ever happened to me, though, because it was right after that I offered the Field of Dreams to be able to run some fall baseball and softball tournaments. And in return, I would keep $15 a team. They keep the rest of the profits. And they were all for it, but they said there's one small problem. How are you going to run fall softball tournaments when there's no such thing as fall baseball or softball tournaments? There's some leagues, but there's no such thing as tournaments. And I said, well, this is a great place to start. So it was in 2001, September and October, we ran about 4 events. We maxed out them events, and it was right after that I made the Field of Dreams an offer to come on board full-time to run all their recreational departments, and then also run all their tournaments. And from 2001 to 2007, July of 2007, that's what I did. I mean, I can tell you when I was out there, I would be out there running the mower, to dragging the fields, to fixing the lights, to fixing any fence repair, running the concession stand, whatever it took to run that complex. I pretty much lived out there along with my family, many a weeks, 100 to 120 hours a week. What I loved about it was just the innocence of where the game was, of where families came together, coaches came together. They brought 9, 10, 11, 14, 15-year-old kids out there, and it was just this family fun atmosphere. I never missed a pitch in my 6 years there. From the very first pitch that was thrown in 2001 until I left that day in July of 2006 or 7, I never missed a pitch at Basehor Field of Dreams. I remember that we would have dance competitions. That's kind of where the theme tournament started, with the luau's and the monster bashes, and it was just this innocent family fun. And the reason that I left there was, quite honestly, the economic side of running a facility, of the upkeep without any tax dollars, was hard to keep up with facilities such as Blue Valley and other municipalities that were being ran. And so it was in January of 2007 is when I approached Tom and Turley, who was retiring from Johnson County Parks and Rec, and I approached Doug Morrison, who obviously was tied in with Jackson County. He was in the process of retiring from the Independent School District, about the opportunity, maybe instead of us competing week in and week out, what would it look like if we all came together and we collaborated for the betterment of the game and for the betterment, most importantly, of these kids, to where we had one place where everybody could come to from a website, one phone number. We would put all the teams into a pool. We'd have better competitive balance, and we would help grow the sport. And I think that Doug and Tom were both at a place where they thought that was ultimately a great idea. We gave it a shot, and that's really where MSP came about. It was an idea in January of 2007, became a reality in August of 2007. That very first year in 2007, guys, we worked out of our homes for a solid year. We would meet every once in a while. Our offices were the Panera Bread off of either the one at the Legends or the one in Olathe. And I remember that very first year, my average phone bill per month was 14,000 minutes on my cell phones, because that was before we obviously had an office. And we as much fun as that was as far as growing the company, what it did is it also though took me outside of being at the complex every single weekend, and there was some good to that, because I needed to be around my kids. I needed to be able to see some of their sporting events, but also what it disconnected me a little bit of what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years that I'm going to begin to talk about. As you guys may remember, if you were with us, I showed up for the initial umpire meetings, and then what happened is we became overwhelmed with the busyness of MSP. In 2008, we expected to run about 1,500 teams in tournaments. We ran about 2,500 teams in tournaments, to where you fast forward now to where 2013, we had over 8,000 teams in tournaments. When we joined forces, we had no idea that the company would take off like this, and quite honestly, we were in survival mode. We just hung on the best we could and the best we knew how to. But I got to be honest, guys, and be a little vulnerable with you, in the sense that there was also a side of me that was enjoying being a successful business guy. And everything that in my life that I had grown up, as far as wanting to be around kids, to give back to kids, that deep down inside was rooted in me. But I was also enamored with the idea that, hey, I can raise, give my family a nice lifestyle, to where my wife doesn't have to work. I can devote, if I put enough time in, that's what I'm gonna be able to do. And I honestly, I think that our focus, unfortunately, became more about MSP at times, and growing USSSA as a brand. And I think we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And where that changed for me personally, guys, if I can be a little bit personal, was in 2010. See, I was so focused on growing MSP, and yeah, we're seeing the sport grow, and there was more kids playing the game. And so I think a lot of people could argue that, hey, you're providing a platform with more opportunities for these kids to be off the street, to put a bat and a ball in their hand and lace up the cleats. But I don't really believe that was our mission. I believe our mission at times was, unfortunately, to just grow MSP. And March of 2010, I was at work at 8 o'clock at night, and my wife called me, and it was a dreaded phone call of my son, who had fought depression and anxiety his whole life, had attempted suicide. And this was his second attempt, but this time he meant business. He was unconscious, and by the grace of God, he pulled through that, and we were able to, doctors were able to save him. But when you go through a situation like that, your life comes to a stop. And no matter where you're at on that journey, nothing mattered anymore. I realized at that point that everything I have today could be gone tomorrow in the snap of a finger. It was August of 2010 that I took an entire month off. We reshuffled the focus of MSP. We reshuffled the focus of our employees and our staff, to where we weren't going to work 100 hours a week anymore. We brought in more staff to help us accomplish what some of our long-term goals were, which was way more than just running a baseball and softball tournament. Update on my son: he is now married. He serves the military and serves our country. He's stationed at Fort Riley, and they're expecting their first one about 3 weeks from today. So excited for where he's come from. He's doing great. So I just appreciate everything that he did for us during that time, because quite honestly, that was a pinnacle moment in our life when everything changed. Fast forward, we began to still continue in MSP to develop these events and postseason opportunities, but there was still something just nagging that we knew there was more that we wanted to do. We wanted to give more, to give back. We started doing some charity events. Something was still missing. And we really didn't know what that was until August of 2012, when we had another tragic situation within our office. A guy that many of you might remember, might know, if you guys saw him at the park, he was always laughing, bubbly, and he always coined the phrase MSP love. Wherever he was at, it was always MSP love. And the truth is that Josh was this bubbly guy that always wanted to provide this warm feeling, to just treat our customers with the utmost respect and love, to go out of his way to give some MSP love to the officials, to treat our tournament directors with a brotherhood and sisterhood that only he could do. And it was August 22nd, 2012, when he was tragically killed one night. And that was another one of them moments where your world stops. So now twice in an amount of just over 2 years, MSP family had gone through, me personally with my son, and now the MSP family going through this in August. We took a few days off, and it was that fall that my daughter joined a travel softball team. And that was the first time since 2007 that I was going to be back out at the park on a consistent basis, where I was going to be at the park for more than just stopping in, delivering material. I was going to be there, sit with the fans, to sit behind home plate and be with the umpires. And guys, it was that fall that I was absolutely taken back of the behavior of coaches and parents. And in just in a short 5 years, where our game had gone. It had gone from this family fun atmosphere where we were providing these great opportunities for these kids to play in a safe place, to where, quite honestly, there was times that I would consider the environment toxic. I heard parents screaming at their kids, telling them that they're an embarrassment, that they pay all this money to see their daughter take pitching lessons and hitting lessons, and they're throwing the money down the drain. And they missed the whole point of what youth sports was supposed to be, which is enjoying this journey with your kids. It was then that I was taken back and knew we had to do something. I continued to play in 2013. My daughter does. I'm out at the park more. I start blogging about some of this, writing more about this, taking notes while I was sitting there, and knew that something had to be done. See, I realized that I've been blessed with this enormous platform to do so much more than just run baseball and softball tournaments. MSP had come a long ways, but I felt like as a voice for these kids, we also had to do something in the sense of there had to be a change. That it's okay to play this game at a high level, to play this game given 110%. It's okay to build character and learn hard work and learn teamwork through this. But it still has to be done in a positive environment, and that I was not seeing. And I felt, and MSP felt, very responsible for this. So it was in September of 2013, this past September, that we kind of launched the MSP Love Initiative. And, what is that going to look like? First thing was establishing a mission statement. And it goes something like this, and you guys have seen it on the bottom of Tony's signatures or stuff that we send out, but it's to walk beside the coaches, the parents, the officials, and the athletes, as we hope to transform the people through sport, as we love on them and have them become the hands and the feet of the community. So it's one thing to write a mission statement, but what are we going to do to live that out? What are we going to do to walk beside the officials, walk beside the coaches, walk beside the parents, and ultimately the athletes? It was in September 2013 we got 18 UICs together, and we talked about maybe some of the issues with not having enough umpires for some of these games, and we talked about the environment, but everything went back, quite honestly, wherever we talked to, it all reverted back to, we would have more umpires if it wasn't such a toxic environment. We'd be able to find younger umpires if the environment wasn't so toxic. So everything we always went to from some of our issues or some of our problems, but we felt could be really solved if the sport would just go back a little bit and what it was just 5 years previous, where it was focused a lot more on family-centered fun. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of coaches and a lot of parents that do this for the right reason. And I don't want to take anything away from all the hundreds of hours that they dedicate to this. But I also realized that there was more that we could do. here, and when I get done speaking, you're gonna hear from Tony and Steve about MSP Love and what we're wanting to do with the officials. And you're going to have a couple takeaways today. One of them that I want you to remember is, in whatever situation that you're in on that field, that love never fails. Don't matter how bad it might get, you're going to hear about the approachability, conflict resolution, and professionalism today from an MSP Love standpoint. And I hope you really embrace this and take this to heart, because I think you guys are such a key piece to influence these coaches and these parents and these athletes and be such a constant reminder for them that, hey, don't forget MSP Love. Don't forget why we do this. So that's what I really want you to take out of this today, is a little bit more about the MSP Love, than even more about the outs and the safes and the strikes and the balls. And yeah, that's all important, and they're going to get into that also. But I hope you walk away today with a newfound excitement, that you walk away knowing that we failed you as an organization over the last few years. I don't feel like we had your back. I felt like at times it probably felt like to you guys that all we cared about was probably the almighty check. And you got my promise that that's not the case, and that's not the case going forward. And no matter what situation you're in, MSP's got your back. In closing, I want to tell you a story, because besides walking beside the official guys, we're doing several things with the athletes, and we're doing things with coaches and parents. And about a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago now, we did a seminar with coaches and parents. And I'll never forget Les Norman, ex-major leaguer, played for the Royals for a while, speaking on a couple topics, and I'm going to close with what he talked about. Number one, he said, behind every face, there's a story. So when you look out there and you see a 13 or you see a 14-year-old girl, remember, you don't know what she's going through. You don't know what she's going through when she has to get in that car and ride home with her parents because of the strikeout that just occurred. Just to remember, behind every face, there's a story. He also talked about the power of an umpire. And when we think about the power of an umpire, a lot of times I think we think about the control of a field. We think about controlling the atmosphere. We think about controlling, this is my field. But when I think about the power of an umpire, I think about the power of influence and the possibilities you guys have to be such an influential part in these kids' life. Les tells this story of playing a game when he was 14 years old. See, Les grew up in an alcoholic home where his parents mentally and physically abused him. And his escape was the sandlot. His escape was being able to play baseball. And he did this from 5 or 6 years old all the way till he was age 14. And he's getting tired, quite honestly, of even turning away from the game of baseball, because he had done that for the last 7 or 8 years, and that wasn't enough to escape him still from the abuse that he was having done at home, and he was seeing at home. He has this game where he gets 1 or 2 hits, and he has his umpire puts his arm around him and says, "Son, I want to let you know you played a great game today." Les looks at this guy, quite honestly, he's taken back by it, because for the first time in 14 years of his life, he was told something positive. He was given something from an encouragement standpoint that he had never heard before. Never from anyone in his life. That very next week, he's out there, and that umpire don't have their game, but he's on an adjacent field. And after the game, he sits around and watches Les finish up his game. And he goes up and he puts his arm around Les again, and he says, "Les, you played another great game today." Les decides, instead of hanging up the cleats and hanging up the bat and the glove, he decides to stick with it. He goes on to enjoy a nice collegiate career, ends up getting drafted into the major leagues by the Kansas City Royals. He played some platoon, played in the outfield, but fast forwarding now to his major league debut, he was at Kauffman Stadium, and he was out towards right field GA, warming up like they all do. And he said knew he was going to get to start that game. So he's looking around for mom or dad or another family member. And he realizes that he's not going to have anybody there to watch his major league debut. Until he hears this voice, and it's over in the right field GA. He hears, "Hey, Les, Les," and this guy's waving at him. And see, he looks over there, and there's that John the umpire again. That same man at 14 years old that put his arm around him and told him great game, and told him to keep his chin up, had followed the next 10 years of his career, and now made sure that he was present at his major league debut. And what he talks about when closing that story, he says, "I'm not sure that I would have ever made it to the collegiate game. I'm not sure I ever would have continued to play if it wasn't for John, the umpire. But what I'm most proud of is that because I was able to stick it out and able to get a college education, and because I was able to get around some great influential people in the major leagues, I was taught how to become a professional dad and a professional husband. And if it wasn't for John taking the time out of where he was at to rush off that field and just put his arm around this lonely kid, that behind every face there's a story, I don't really believe that I would be married to the woman I'm married to right now. I'd have the 2 beautiful kids that I have right now." Folks, that is the power of an umpire. That is the power that you possess on this field. I hope that you see your profession as so much more than just a paycheck or just a job. I hope you see it as a purpose and as a mission. And I hope you're willing to walk beside us as we launch MSP Love. Enjoy your next 3.5 hours. And 2 takeaways. No matter what situation you're in, love never fails. And MSP's got your back. Thank you, and have a great day.